I want to string together a few verses this morning that lay out, I think, an important challenge of religion to who we are and how we walk through the world. One of them is from the next couple of weeks we'll read double Torah portions. So in 2 weeks we will celebrate the bar mitzvah of Kol Reznik and read the Torah portions Achrei Mot and Kedoshim. And in Kedoshim we read Lo tisnat achicha bilvavecha chochech tochiach ish et amitecha velo tisa alav chet. Don't hate your brother in your heart. Surely give rebuke and do not bear sin because of it. Been interpreted in many, many ways, but one of them is don't hate your brother. If you feel that hatred, then you need to talk it out. By the way, don't talk about it to other people. Right? Talk about it to, that's called Lashon Hara, which is our biggest temptation, is to go and tell other people about how someone is bothering us so much, but really we need to approach the person, talk it out, and velo tisa alav chet, and don't bear sin because of it. Again, interpreted in many ways, but one of them is when you give this rebuke, you need to do so in a way that's not sinful. And part of what that means is you have to know that it can be heard. You have to give the rebuke, in a way such that it can be heard. The rabbis say, Im ein ahava ein tochacha, you can't do tochacha unless you have love. So you need to give that rebuke in a way that number one, it comes from a place of love, but also you have to know that it can be heard. And if it can't be heard, then you should rather refrain from it. Which leaves you sometimes doing what the tradition says elsewhere is shalom bayit, which means peace in the home. It leaves you sometimes feeling one way on the inside and acting differently on the outside for the sake of peace in the home. Because if everything is expressed all the time, it's hard for things to be peaceful. But the Torah comes along this Shabbat, and at least according to the Kli Yakar, points to the difficulty that leaves us with. There is a paragraph where the Torah describes in order for an animal to be kosher, it needs to do 2 things. And I'm talking here not about fish, but about farm animals. Anybody know the 2 things? Has to have cloven hooves and chew its cud. That's right. It has to have cloven hooves and chew its cud. And in describing this, the Torah then goes through a few examples of animals that don't do these things. The camel and the daman, some sort of small Syrian hyrax. Okay, I confess to not knowing too much about the daman. And the rabbit, the hare, and of course the pig, okay? And each one of these, the first 3, the Torah says about them that although they chew their cud, they have no hooves, okay? Or no true hooves. I actually learned this, that the camel, if you pay attention to your Eitz Chaim commentary, you can learn that the hoof of the camel is split in the upper part, but bound together in the lower part. And so since it only has half of a split hoof, half of a cloven hoof, it doesn't count, okay? But the way that the Torah puts this is first by saying, yes, it chews its cud, but it doesn't have a hoof. Same thing for the hare. It seems like it's chewing its cud, but does not have the hoof. And then when it comes around to the pig, right, the thing about the pig is that it does have cloven hooves. So on the outside, it looks like it could be kosher, but on the inside, it's not, okay, because it does not chew its cud. And the Kli Yakar asked the question, he basically says, look, when the Torah is describing why these animals are forbidden, the Torah could just get right to the point and say the camel is not permitted because it does not have a cloven hoof. Okay? And the same thing for the hare and the same thing for the daman. And the pig is not permitted because it doesn't chew its cud. But in each of the cases, it begins by saying what it does do, okay? And then finishes by saying what it doesn't do. You understand? Right? It says, yes, it chews its cud, but it doesn't have a cloven hoof. Yes, it chews its cud, but it doesn't have a cloven hoof. Yes, it has a cloven hoof, but no, it doesn't chew its cud. So why begin with the positive and then get to the negative? And one answer to this is essentially to accentuate the hypocrisy. Right? It's to accentuate the idea that it actually does one thing which might make you think that it's kosher, but it's not kosher. Right? Rather than just saying, well, this is the reason it's not kosher. It's the danger of these animals, right? I say danger in quotation marks. But the danger of these animals is that they do things that make themselves appear on the outside one way, but on the inside are another way. And the Kli Yakar even brings a compliment of Joseph and his brothers, okay, from a different book in the Torah, where the Torah tells us, "Velo yachlu dabro l'shalom." The brothers couldn't say a word of peace to Joseph. And Rashi there says this was actually l'shivcham, it was actually in praise of them because they didn't act like they liked Joseph. Right? They couldn't speak to him in peace, so they didn't say anything nice to Joseph. They felt that way about him, and they acted that way too. Right? There's this other strain in the Jewish tradition that says, if you feel one way, then you need to act that way. The rabbis in another place, there is a head of the academy who says, Ein adam nichnas lebeit hamidrash ele im tocho gevaro. A person should not go into the Beit Midrash unless their inside is like their outside. You have to have good roots. The other side of that is, by the way, that as soon as he was done being the head of the academy, they added 400 benches to the Beit Midrash, which means that he was keeping a lot of people from learning. And by the way, what better reason to go to the Beit Midrash to learn than to fix this essential problem of your inside not being like your outside. The Torah can be a source of spiritual repair. So there's this balance between, on the one hand, we have to be pure, we have to be who we are, and on the other hand, there are times when we should hold our peace. And in order to have peace, that sometimes comes at a cost, which is that we feel conflicted because we're not being totally truthful. And I think that this critique that the Kli Yakar is pointing to, the Torah says, look out for these that seem one way on the outside but are another way on the inside. It's an important critique because very often I think that we can rationalize why it is that we are acting, and we can make ourselves safe by saying, well, it's okay, it's all right for me to act one way and not the other, it's for the sake of the greater good. And the Torah is planting a little seed and saying, you're going to lose yourself. We lose ourselves when we pretend. One other comment from the Eitz Chaim. Only twice in the Torah are we commanded not to eat pork. 2 times. Yet every Jew knows that it's forbidden. Right? This is the quintessential, we don't eat bacon, we don't eat pork. The Torah commands us many, many more times, and in fact, just think about the Al Chetz that we recite on Yom Kippur. There's nothing really in there. There's something about eat and drink, but there's nothing in there about kashrut. But over and over and over again, we say Al Chetz for evil speech. The Torah commands us many more times to refrain from gossip, hurtful speech, yet many observant Jews do not sense that they are violating the Torah when they speak ill of others. A statement of Yisrael Salanter, the father of the Musar movement. We can seem close to God on the outside, but on the inside, or with other things, be not. So we have to try to make those two things match. Toho, kivaro, our insides like our outsides, at the same time as we try to find peace as well. Shabbat Shalom. Please rise.